Hi, this is Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this afternoon, we're going to be doing a service here on a Shimano FX-300 graphite spinning reel. So, as you can see, it's in pretty clean shape already, this reel, but we're going to go through all the take-apart steps, the cleaning, and we're going to hopefully get it ready to do some fishing. So we'll start with taking the handle off. But this reel, it's a graphite reel construction, and it's just a bushing reel. There's no ball bearings in this particular reel, so it's just one little thing to note. Take the spool off. You can see that there's no rotor nut on top. So we got 4 screws here that we're going to take out. But normally when there's no rotor nut on top, it means that there's a sleeve that holds it in underneath. So we'll have a look at that once we take this apart here. But it's a pretty basic design. It's got a rear drag system, of course, which we'll need to take a look at and go through. Take our plate off. You just want to make sure you clean off the inside of this real good. This is already quite clean, and there's a plastic bushing right there. So I've got that. Now this main gear, I believe, is not going to come out until we take out the axle shaft, which you need to remove this screw here in this position. And there's a snap, little snap piece right here. It's got these claws on it right here. You need to take that out. Just make note of the orientation of all these pieces and parts when you're doing this. So now drive shaft should come out. Got your main gear, and we've also got the bushing attached to it. Don't want to lose that. Okay, and now we got our block and our crosswind gear. All those pieces come out. Now this is what we were talking about here. So there's this kind of, it's like a snap ring here, but it's not really a ring. It's just a big thin piece of metal here, basically. But that holds in the rotor assembly, which is probably attached already to the or the pinion gear is already attached to the rotor. Now you just want to be careful doing this, and because there could be some pieces and parts that are loose under here. Okay, so we've got a couple of plastic pieces here, and it also looks like there's a metal washer right here. So you just want to make note of the orientation of these pieces and parts here, because they need to go back exactly the way that they were. Okay. So you just want to make note of that. But this whole pinion gear assembly here, this is all one piece and part of the rotor here, it looks like. So this is a pretty common design, you know, for the more entry-level reels, I'd say. So all you can really do is just clean up the inside of this, and that's really all you can do. And we're just going to hit a little bit of reel oil, a little bit of Reel X here for the bail. There's really nothing going on this side of the bail here, so you know, we'll just do a little bit of reel oil here along the seam where the bail is. And then while we're here, we'll also take a look at our line roller, and it actually would appear that this line roller, it's moving, but it's definitely in need of a little attention. So we'll take this screw out here. We'll have a look at this and see what it looks like. Just take a Q-tip to this here. And I just want to clean off the line roller shaft here, and then we'll just apply a little bead of oil to that. That's all you really need to do. Spin that back on there. Maybe just a little bead on the threads there for when we go to put this back. Don't want to over tighten it, but now that roller's moving real nice. Okay. Okay. So now we'll put that off to the side, and in here, there's really not too much to do. We just want to make sure we hit this with a little bit of real oil here and here and there, so that those pieces get exercised with some lubricant. Clean off the inside of this here the best that we can with a Q-tip. Just want to get all this old grease out of here. So one of the problems with rear drag reel systems such as this one is all the grease has a tendency to flow down into the drag system. And I just did an Abu Garcia reel that kind of wreaked some problems in that department, basically, of too much grease flowing down into the drag stack, and that usually comes from just over greasing and not doing proper reel maintenance. Okay, so that's all pretty clean in there. There's really not too much more to do. So now we want to take apart our drag stack here, and we want to have a look at that. So we've got a screw here that comes out, and then we've got our cap comes off. Now this is all pretty dirty here, and again, this is what I was talking about. There's all kinds of grease that's built up down here that doesn't really belong there. So we want to make sure that we clean this up real good. So there's a snap ring in here, and it needs to come out, and you can usually pry it out with the help of a screwdriver. We're going to try to pry this out so we can get access to our drag stack here. You should be able to unwind this piece here. Yeah, this is loaded with grease though, which is something you don't want, because that really affects your drag system. It'll just slip, essentially. Okay. All right, so make note your pieces and parts here that are flying around here. So we've got a spring, and then we've also got a washer, 2 washers, okay, and a lot of grease here at the bottom. And so we want to clean up all this grease for sure. And what I'm actually going to do here is I'm just going to take some degreaser to that right now. Just let that work its way in there a little bit. Yeah, because all these pieces and parts, they're just immersed in this grease. I want to get all that out of there for sure. Clean up our washers. Clean washers, clean spring. And another trick is you can use a toothbrush on this. Yeah, very, very dirty. Want to make sure you have plenty of clean paper towels around when you're doing this. Okay, so now that the inside of this is clean, we're just going to put our 2 washers back in there, put our spring back in there so we don't lose any of those pieces and parts right out the gate. Just keep them together. Now, we want to have a look at the inside of our drag stack here. And you should be able to just kind of tap out the whole drag assembly here, and then you can also take a pair of needle nose and slowly pull it out, but you want to go slow. Look at how immersed this is in grease. That's probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen, actually. These things are just like glued together here. It's kind of hard to see on camera. I'll try to zoom in on this there. That's just way, way, way too much grease. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to take all these pieces out here one by one, and we're going to clean them up real good. And I'll probably do that off camera, and then we'll come back in a moment. But I'll show you what these pieces look like here one by one. Yeah, there should never be this much grease immersed on a drag stack though like this. So you just take them off one by one. Very important that you note the orientation. I recommend getting the schematic if you're not familiar with the reel. Okay. And then there's a little fiber washer here at the top. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to pause the video for a moment. I'm going to clean up all these washers, all these pieces and parts, and then get them ready to go back in there. Also clean the inside of this housing real good so that there's no residual grease or any buildup left in there. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay, so now that we got all these pieces and parts cleaned up, we're just going to go back in the reverse order. And we're going to put them all back in there, basically. So note that these little tabs that stick up out of here, they need to face upward. It's a little hard to see on camera, but there's two of them. These are keyed washers, and they need to face upward. Okay. Just put them back like so. You just want to use caution doing this so that you don't have everything kind of falling apart on you. And this is kind of a deep, deep channel here that these have to go into. So what I find helps here is just making use of those needle nose and just grabbing one in gently and just putting it back down in like so. That top keyed washer's getting a little on the fritz, but it'll sink down in there eventually, like so. Okay, so it should look something like that. And then you're ready to put your spring back into position here. Sometimes there's threads on these. This one doesn't have any, but you want to make sure that that's seated properly down there before you apply your outer cap, so to speak. Now this piece is really dirty here still, and we're going to hit a little bit of degreaser on that. I'll get all that old residual grease out of there. Clean the inside off the best that you can. I like to make use of Q-tips when I'm doing this as well. It's helpful. Okay, so now our snap ring goes back in. Should be something like that. Then put your cap back on. And you need to tighten this up before you put your screw back in. Okay. Take that Phillips, snug that up gently, and then loosen it up. Okay. And on this particular model, there's no numbers on this drag. It just says less or more. So you just want to make note of that. Okay. So now we want to make sure we put our bushing back in here. Clean off our plastic bushing. And it's got two like little keys, little notches, and it has to set down in there just right. Okay. So now we're pretty much ready to put our rotor and our pinion gear back into position. But make note that you want to clean off these points real good and then apply your oil in those positions like we did earlier. I'm just going to do it one more time here because I had to do a little extra cleaning on this here, but so that should work just fine like that. Okay, now we've already handled our oiling up here on this end, but now we need to do our blue grease down here on this end. But we also have these pieces and parts that need to go back in the right order that they came off in, like so. Now this piece here, I believe what we can do with this piece, because it's got this little notch right here, it can't be mistaken, and there's actually a notch that matches it right here, so this can actually be set down on this part of the reel. And it should just nest in there just like that. Okay. Now, we'll apply our blue grease to our pinion gear, which was quite clean and quite dry for that matter, so okay, so you should have something that looks similar to that. Now this notch here has to be lined up in between these two right here on that plastic washer right there. So you have to have that in that vicinity in order for this to line up properly. Okay, then you can put your tab back in, lock tab, if you will. Okay. So now it's really just about putting back all the rest of the pieces and parts. You just want to clean off all the teeth on these gears here real well. Take your blue grease to underneath this wheel. Apply it to your teeth. And on top, just a little bit. Put that back down into position like so. And then we got our Crosswind block. I just like to clean out this channel underneath here with a Q-tip. A little bit of blue grease on that. So we'll take some 4/0 steel wool to this shaft here and clean that off real well. Do our blue grease on the shaft. Just do a light film of it. It doesn't have to be much, just enough like that. Okay. Because again, you don't want all that grease buildup coming down into place. And before we do this though, we need to put the gear back in. I just remembered. There's kind of a sequence that you have to follow with each reel, and with this particular one, we have to put this back in first, I believe. And don't lose your washers here. They're on top. There's actually two of them, two thin washers. I'm just going to hit this with a little bit of multi-purpose lube. Just want to clean off these teeth real good. I'll take a Q-tip to the inside here. And then we'll do our blue grease on the shaft and on all the teeth. Okay, so now you should be able to rest your main gear back into position, and then put your drive line back down through the cross block, and you need to go all the way down and make sure that it sinks all the way down into your drag stack here, okay? And then we've got our capture right here that needs to go back over the drive shaft, and there's two little slots in the drive line for that purpose, okay? And then you just roll that back over, apply a little bead of oil in those threads, and put your set screw back into position. Okay. All this is cleaned up real nice already, so we'll just put a little bit of blue grease there on the outside of the shaft. Put our plate back on, put our 4 screws back into position. And just by looking at this, there actually is a slightly shorter screw, which I believe goes in this corner here. So you just want to make note of that if you're working on the same reel. And we'll put our screws back in. Okay, we'll do a little blue grease here on our handle shaft. There's a little bit of old residual grease under here on the handle. I just like to do a slight bead of oil right here. Just work that in there like so. And I'll do a little bead here on our threads for our handle cap. All right. Put our spool back into position. Okay. The bail's working nice. We're going to make sure that our drag is working properly. I can hear it. Yeah. That's nice smooth drag. Something that Shimano's been legendary for is making really, really good quality smooth drag systems. So there you have it. That's the Shimano FX-300 graphite construction spinning reel, all serviced up and ready to go. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more, please subscribe and hit that notification button. We'll see you next time.